Hey witches, Marcus James here. How are you guys doing? And happy Lunar New Year. It is the year of the wood snake. This is all about looking deeper within, spiritual evolution, growing deeper in your spirituality. And I, it's that it kind of got me thinking about the subject of spirituality and faith um, as it pertains to paganism, polytheism, heathenism, Satanism, witchcraft, and how they are not the same. They're not mutually exclusive. Witchcraft is not a religion. It's witchcraft. It's magic. It's the art and science of witchcraft. You can be, you can be a witch, regardless of whether you have religion, faith, spirituality, belief in a deity, deities, whatever or not. Whether you're Christian or not, and Christian witches are like a whole other thing that, yes, you can be a witch and Christian. You can be a witch and be anything or not anything. But Christianity is very, very clear about its stance on all things witchcraft and the occult. Yes, there are concessions. For example, the Witch of Endor and how, was it David or Saul, I think maybe? Or I have those backwards, I think maybe. Saul, I think. It's Saul who goes to find the Witch of Endor, and it's the Witch of Endor, and this is presented in a positive light. There's no real punishment. But other than that, I mean, the Bible is pretty clear. But whatever, you want to be Christians, and you can reconcile being a witch and adhering and having connection and adhering to Christianity. Sure, go ahead, whatever. That's not what this is about. Not debating that. Again, witchcraft and faith, religion, spirituality, those are all very different things. But and we'll actually cover this in the full moon episode of Spelling HEKA-TEA in the witchy news. But last week, the Tulsa, Oklahoma City Council basically were like, we're not going to have community opening prayer invocations anymore, which is good. Like, separation of church and state, like religion, there shouldn't be any type of invocation of religious before any type of government meeting, like it shouldn't happen. But they didn't do it out of the recognition of like separation of church and state and like religion should not be involved in politics, and so let's evolve and remove this. No, it's because they allowed the invocation to be done by a witch who did a very beautiful invocation to the goddess Medusa, the Greek Gorgon goddess Medusa. It's beautiful, and it was all about justice and protection for women and for victims of sexual assault and violence. As we know, Hera being Hera, instead of siding with the victim of her husband's rape, curse the victim, punish the victim, which is Hera's lasting legacy for sexual assault victims. And yeah, it was a really beautiful invocation. And then that preceded the next meeting by an invocation being the invocation being performed. I'm gonna say invocation because there was no spiritual element to it, because it was performed by an atheist. It was an atheistic invocation, so it was really just like I think I would just classify it more as like a plea to everyone's inner conscience and morals and doing the right thing. And but because of this, there was so much outrage, especially, of course, over the witch doing the invocation of Medusa. And I think Oklahoma's governor was like, the only place an invocation like that is welcome is in hell. And I think I'd have to go back and look, but I believe that the mayor of Tulsa was like, Tulsa will never belong to Satan or something like that. Just ridiculousness. And so they're like, oh, it can't just be the Christian religion. Like, if we're going to do these invocations, then we have to acknowledge anyone's religion. So we're just not going to do it, period. Which again is a good thing. You shouldn't want to do that. We shouldn't be having any type of religious invocation prayers in city councils or government. It should be separation of church and state. Yeah. But the reason is that Christians think they have a monopoly on the word faith. They think they have a monopoly on the word spiritual. They think that they have a monopoly on the word religion, on the term people of faith. And this just isn't true. And because they think they have this monopoly, whenever they are confronted with having to acknowledge the religion of others, they instead just fucking blow it all up, because they can't do that, because their religion tells them, and they reinforce through their cult, that they are the one true way. Christianity is the only way. That is what they evangelize. And so you take that away from them, by making them, by virtue of just having them acknowledge other religions, other faiths, other whatever, they just will have to destroy everything. They'll have to destroy the whole thing, the whole whatever it is, before doing that, because, you know, they can't do that. This video, this vlog, is not about that. It's what that got me thinking about in terms of the Lunar New Year, the year of the wood snake, in terms of the new moon, and what that signifies and what that means, what that, and faith, and what that, because of what all that means for me. This is about, yes, I'm a polytheist, I'm a pagan, heathen, whatever. I identify as polytheist. I mean, I guess you could say it's the intellectual way of saying you're a pagan. I just like the term polytheist over pagan. Because pagan was not, I mean, was kind of a derogatory term, just of the country folk, but it was done in this, like, it was meant in this yeehaw hillbilly country backwards kind of way, is what pagan was meant as. So polytheist, to me, is more accurate of a description. So I'm a polytheist. More specifically, I am a Heketean. I am a devotee of Hekate, of Hekate, of Hekate. She of many names, the many name and nay, the creatrix of the universe, the world soul, the savior, the mother of all gods and men, she who came from far off and before, she who comes from before, she who has been there from the beginning and the end. Yeah, the ruler of the heavens, the earth, and the untamable, unfathomable, unfruitful seas, queen of all the realms, queen of heaven, queen of hell, Hekate. I'm deeply devoted to her. I'm also deeply devoted to Santa Muerte, and a couple other deities. And that's a whole other, that's not what this is about. This is actually specifically about Hekate, and about faith, and about religion, spirituality, and reclaiming those terms, and making it a point to reclaim them. That begins, I mean, with my story. So there's also going to be an altar tour in this. Halfway through, we'll do an altar tour, which is behind me, to Hekate. Hekate, she, the many named Monet. In order to do that, I just have to kind of, I guess in a way, go into my story about how I came to all of this, how I came to her. Because I am devoted. And I mean, whenever I do ritual, full moon, new moon, weekly novenas to Santa Muerte, always, I call it going to church. Half joking, but in a way not. I have a whole playlist that is designed in a very specific way. My Spotify list, that is, and right now it's private. Maybe I'll open it up, unlock it, so you guys can listen to it, use it, check it out. Very much curated, but yeah, I start it every beginning of ritual as getting ready, and then through it with a lot of traditional hymnals and other things, and contemporary stuff, and just things that matter and mean, but there's a whole, like, process to it, and I do it. It's like going to church, and I look forward to it. I look forward to it every week. I look forward to it every new moon and every full moon. I look forward to ritual every Sabbath. I look forward to ritual all the time. Have my entire life. It annoys me and pisses me off that the whole Abrahamic faiths in general, I mean, they all, but especially Christians, especially American Christians, and especially evangelical American Christians, they think that that people of faith, religious people, spiritual people, for them, that just means one thing: them. That describes them. They are the only, that they have a monopoly on these words, and they are using that to create a theocracy, and have used that to infiltrate government, and are using that to now make decisions and laws and policies and so forth based on their religion and their faith. And when they talk about, you know, bringing religion back into schools, they're talking about their religion, not anyone else's religion. They don't acknowledge anybody else's religion as real or valid, and they are Christian nationalists. They want America, they want the United States, they want every country, because these people are in every country, on every continent, and they want those countries, those governments, to be run theocratically through evangelical Christianity. For everyone they don't like, for everyone and everything they don't like. They don't give a fuck about our Old Testament law. They don't give a fuck about the New Testament. Like, they don't care about the New Testament. They don't care about the teachings of Jesus. They say they do. They claim they do, but they don't. And that's fine, because Jesus isn't, they can have all of it. They can have all of it. It has nothing to do with me. People in my family are very, very, very hardcore, fire and brimstone, fundamentalist, evangelical Christians. And for many a reason, but mainly because I'm gay, I don't have a relationship with them. They're very toxic, destructive, abusive people. So I always knew I was a witch. We'll just get into it, okay? I always knew that I was a witch. My entire life. My entire life. We're talking preschool. We're talking preschool. I remember I used to pick buttercups. And we would do this thing where you would, everyone does it. Like, oh, do you like butter or not? And if you put the buttercup under your chin, and if the light reflects yellow on you, it means that you like butter. Which probably has pagan origins. I have not Googled. I haven't looked that up. I haven't researched. I say Google because I don't know if I would find that information in a book. I guess I could go to the library and see about looking it up, but they haven't go on the computer. I would make wishes with the buttercups. And of course, and making wishes with dandelions. Blowing the seeds. That's casting a spell. That is very primitive spellcraft. We all know that, I think, right? As witches, as magical practitioners, I think we all know that that's just like really, really old, primitive, basic, or as people are using the term now, analog witchcraft. So I actually understood that as a kid, and I actually and I do remember in preschool. Now, when I say preschool, I was 3, 4. I remember very much using it for very real wishes, things, and concentrating, and just having an understanding that it was I was whispering it to the dandelions themselves, and I remember I would always concentrate on bringing a strong wind to blow it all every time, because I knew I needed the east, I needed air to help facilitate the movement of my spell, and I understood that it was a spell. But the minute I encountered a witch, like Eureka's Castle, when I was in preschool, or this animated fairy tales thing that would play on Nickelodeon, Nick Jr. I don't even think it was called Nick Jr. when I was in preschool. I think it was just Nickelodeon, and they just played what they played. I don't think they called it Nick Jr. I could be wrong, but I don't remember them calling it Nick Jr. until I got older, and then it suddenly was Nick Jr. in the daytime, Nickelodeon, and then Nick at night, or if it was Friday and Saturday, Nick at night. The witch was there from the very beginning. Also, I grew up, I saw spirits, and I still do. Not in the same way as I did when I was, 2, 3, 4 years old, but I do remember. They would come to me a lot at night. It was very scary. So the witch was always present. Magic was always present. It was the 80s. My family was into horror movies. Just horror imagery was everywhere in the 80s, including in kids shows. And I fell in love with vampires, Count Duckula. Had a big crush on Count Duckula when I was 4. But I always knew that I was a witch. I just always knew it. I identified with the witch so much. Again, from the very beginning, from preschool. And I also knew that there was a witch queen. There was a witch queen, a grand high witch, I guess. The archetype of the witch. I just knew that she that was real. There was a queen of the witches, and I would talk to her. I can't believe I'm even admitting this shit. This stuff is really personal for me. These are beliefs and things that I had as a little kid that I didn't talk about, and I was also trying to somehow reconcile and meld in with Christianity, but Christianity never fit for me, and I always knew it didn't, and I knew it had nothing to do with me. I remember that in those moments when I would get scared and I would be visited at night by ghosts, and at this time there was stuff going on in my family, and my brother was not home with us, so I would be by myself at night, and it was very terrifying. And I started praying to the witch, to the queen of witches at night. And it helped me fall asleep. That's the only way to describe it. It's just to help me fall asleep. I don't know if, I didn't know who I was praying to at the time. So it's not for all I know, it had nothing to do with anything. It just was just the act of starting to focus on praying, because I was well, they're ghosts, and, witches were magical, and they could call ghosts, and they could stop ghosts, and this is all stuff pop culture taught me at 3 years old, 4 years old, just from watching movies and TV and hearing in stories. I knew what I knew what witches could and could not do. So I would pray to this witch to save me, and which is weird. Most kids don't do that, and witches are scary. But for me, they weren't. Because I knew I was one. I was like, I'm a witch, and I can do magic, and because I also knew, even as a 3-4 year old, because I would talk about it in preschool, with the other kids at lunch. Sometimes I would in the room, I would talk about the fact that I saw ghosts, that I saw things, spirits, and other kids didn't. And then I got in trouble for scaring the other kids, and giving them nightmares. I just knew magic was real, and I just knew witches were real, and that they weren't evil, and that I was one. I don't know. There's inherent knowledge there, and I think that she was always Hekate. She was always present. And as I got older, and by older I mean by kindergarten, 5th grade or 1st grade, I by then was going to the library, and I would check out books on witches all the time. Books on witches and witchcraft and hauntings, and that was obviously the hauntings. That was to figure out what I was experiencing. And to be clear, almost everyone in my family has some type of clairvoyant mediumship, and we always have. We talk about that amongst ourselves. That's not a big secret. This is on my mom's maternal side of the family. And they're who, when I was at this age in preschool and stuff, we were all in Bellingham. We were all around each other. So I was, checking out books on ghosts and hauntings in some ways, and to kind of normalize it to myself, to get rid of the fear, to understand. And don't get me wrong, like, ghosts are still scary, and there are some scary things out there. But it helped me to deal with it by understanding what it was that I was experiencing and what they could and could not do. And then I would check out shit on witches. And the thing is, though, it wasn't because I just wanted to read stories on witches. I was trying to find spell books, and I would, whenever there was if I read a story about a witch and there was a spell in it, and it sounded authentically real. And even in kindergarten, I remember I would know, if it was a fairy tale spell, or I would something about the way it went, or the things that were mentioned in the spell felt real. And I mean, they probably weren't. They were just part of the stories most of the time. But if it felt like it was possibly a real spell, I would try to remember it, or I would copy it down. I would try to figure out the mechanics to actually make it work, because a lot of times I felt like there was just something that I needed to find, and if I could say it in the right way, move my hands in the right way, whatever, it would make the spell actually work. So yeah, even in kindergarten, I was searching for spell books, and I remember, and at one point, actually, one summer, and I think it was between 1st and 2nd grade, or maybe it was between 2nd and 3rd. Anyway, but I did find a book. It was a kid's book of spells, and it was really beautifully illustrated. And I remember it had a pinkety thumb to thumb pinky thumb to thumb is how it started in the spell book. But it was a spell to bring money. I think it was a money spell, and it involved 6 pennies. And I did it with my grandma. Yeah. I'm trying to find this book. If that sounds familiar to any of you, let a witch know. Send me a link. I'm really trying to find this book. It was a kid's book. It had beautiful illustrations. This would have been 92, 93-ish when, let's see, like I said, it was either 1st into 2nd or 2nd into 3rd. So it would have been 91, 92-ish, 93-ish. So between 91 and 93, maybe, I don't know. And it could have come out before then, but this is when I saw it and had checked it out. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. The point is that I was always checking out spell books, checking out books on witches and witchcraft, even in kindergarten, from my school, from the public library, because I was looking for truths that I knew inherently deep down were real. And I remember, after seeing the witches, yeah, I knew the Grand High Witch was real. How to describe it? The image of the witch flying over an illustration from the 1900s or 1800s, 19th century, illustration of witches flying over a village or in front of the moon. Just the image of the witch spoke deep to my soul, deep to my soul, in a way that I, even at 4 years old, 5 years old, I understood. At 3 years old, I understood. And on some intrinsic, deep, primal level, I understood. And I began hunting. I began witch hunting, so to speak. I began hunting for the witch. And then I checked out this book. I remember it was from the public library. I was in the first grade, and I found this book on witches. It was this big book on witches, but it was like narrow. It wasn't like a big book. It was like a novel size, standard novel size. It was hardcover, and it was like thick. And I am like, this is a spell book. This is a spell book. It was not a spell book. It was not a spell book at all. I opened this book, and it's just about history. It's like there's stories about witches and witchcraft and stuff in it, and fairy tales, etc. But there was also like history about witches and witchcraft, and pictures, art, images of witches and witchcraft, and I do remember in it there was this like image. She almost looked like it was like an illustration. She almost in the illustration looked like Angelica Houston in The Witches, not like her cronish form, but when she's all elegant and and she almost looked like that in this illustration. But there was like, and she was like had like robes and like this thing, and there was like spirits and other witches around her, but there was three of her, and I like triple formed, But I remember I was like, I remember trying to figure it out for a second. Like I didn't understand because I was like 6 years old. Like I was trying to understand. I just thought like the illustration was bad. I was just trying to figure out what the rest of their body was. I didn't get it. But then I remember turning the page, and on the next page was this postcard illustration painting, whatever, from the 1800s, 19th century of Hekate. Yeah, so this image, and which I'm sure is familiar to a lot of you. And I was transfixed. I remember it was scary and creepy and eerie, but also freeing. But most importantly, when I saw the image, and when I saw that it said Hekate or Hekate, however you want to pronounce it, I knew that was her. Like, I knew it. I knew that she was real. And that became a very secret love affair in my heart for her. A secret devotion to her. Like I said, I was also trying to reconcile Christianity with all of this. I was being taken to Sunday school at this point, pretty much every Sunday. My mom did not go to Sunday church service, which always pissed me off. My brother and I were forced to go. I would bring my books. I would sneak my books in with me because I had like a big ski jacket. So I would sneak in books that I had on witches or vampires, monsters, whatever, in my ski coat. And then when I got to Sunday school, we go down into the basement where Sunday school was and shit. I would either sit in the back. I would try to sit in the back, and especially because the lights would go out, and also it was where the Sunny Delight and like the cheesy Ritz cracker sandwiches were, and was a piggy who had to eat all the time. So but then once the lights went out, I would pull out my book, whatever I was reading, and I did not pay attention because again, I knew that Christianity had nothing to do with me. I knew that whatever was being taught had nothing to do with me. I always heard her calling. I just always knew that I was a child of a different god, an older one. I just was always a polytheist. I was always a follower of the goddess, and specifically Hekate. She would be mentioned casually. She was always mysterious. She's always mysterious. Hekate is nothing if not mysterious. But she was leading me to her. And it took a while. It took years for me to get there, but I started early. I started everything early. I started my writing career very early too. By the time I was 13, I had committed myself to her in 8th grade. The summer going into 8th grade, so the summer of 1997, on my 13th birthday, I completely and wholly committed myself to Hekate specifically, by name. And it's been that way ever since. And she has saved my life on more than one occasion. She has been there with me, guiding me, protecting me, literally saving me from unaliving myself more than once. When you are the only openly gay kid in your school at a time when just young people weren't out of the closet, it just wasn't a thing. I came out when I was 13 in 1998. In the spring of 1998, in 8th grade, I came out as gay. The following school year, fall of 98, freshman in high school, is when Matthew Shepard in Laramie, Wyoming, was beaten and robbed and killed, left for dead on tied to a deer fence. And then my best friend and I started I think it was probably the first gay straight alliance in Washington schools. And that was a terrifying endeavor, and there was no one on our side. And in terms of me personally and my life and my family life, there was no support. There just wasn't. And that was a very dark time in my life, and filled with a lot of darkness and hopelessness. And there was one time in particular, I had found myself at an overpass, and I was prepared to jump to end my life instead of going back to where I was at that time, and who I was with at that time. And she came to me in probably the most realist way that I think I ever experienced her. And, she stopped me. And she said, give it to me. Give me your pain. Give me your burden. You are my child before anyone else's. You're one of my witches. So leave it to me. Give it to me. And I did. And I remember I walked back to where I was escaping from with a new sense of resolve and a new sense of vigor. My devotion to her is very, very religious. It's very, very much in service of her. I reference her in all of my books, and that's really easy in my Blackmore series because it's about a family of witches, and so she's called on, talked about a lot in those books, but in all of my books she finds her way in. I write for her and to her, and the show Spelling the HEKA-TEA, that came from a full moon ritual. The idea of that, which it gets talked about in the Samhain episode, our first episode. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. And pray to her and be like, please help me figure this out, help me figure this out. And then it all just came to me, like, you need to do the show, like a talk show, like witches, a talk show for witches by witches, and you're going to call it Spelling the HEKA-TEA. Like, that's what you're going to call it. And it all, like, came to me in that moment. And it was very much, this is in service of her. And when I invoked her about it, when I went to her about it, I was very much like, whatever I do, I want it to be in service of you. And I really, moving forward, I don't want to just be like a queer horror author. I really want to be known as a queer horror witch author. And just like in the sense that, there are Christian authors who write, novels, thrillers, but from, that are Christian-based, faith-based. I want mine to be witchcraft, faith-based, whatever that is. Like, use me as your instrument, Hekate. Use me. Like, I just want it to matter, and I want it to be in service of you. And that's because I am called by her, and I always have been. And so it just really pisses me off when, Christians, especially, try to just like lay claim to the terms, the words, people of faith, terms like that, the word faith, the word religion, spirituality, faith-based, blah, blah, blah. We need to take away their monopoly or their assumed, presumed monopoly on these words, on these terms. Especially now, we are in such a dark time, and shit's really fucked up, and we need to do a reclamation as polytheists, as followers, and to say, like, just not just the Abrahamic faith get this. Like, we are religious people, we are people of faith, we are spiritual people. Like, my faith, my religion, my spirituality, my dedication to my deities is intrinsic in every aspect of my life and always has been. And always will be. So we need to take these words back from them, especially because they're using it now to weaponize and justify discrimination and oppression and the dismantling of democratic society. That's who I am, and I'm proud of that. And I refuse to let Christians or anybody else, especially anyone from the Abrahamic faith, say that the only people that are religious, the only people that are spiritual or moral or whatever are them, because that's just not true. And I please implore you all, if you're polytheist, to pagan, whatever, to, if you can, to be more open about it and how it influences your witchcraft and what that means. And again, just to preface, witchcraft is not a religion. It is a magical practice, and it's magic. That is not religious. Magic does not belong to any particular religion or deity or anything. So with that being said, now, before I have to get on to my new moon ritual, because it is Hekate's dawn, it is her feast night, why don't I show you a little altar tour of Hekate's altar. All right, so here is my altar to Hekate. It's behind me. I'll show you kind of pulled out from the back. It goes all the way up the wall. So down here, right here, we have almost all of my decks. This is an Hermes tarot deck, gold foiled, and it came out in August of 1984, actually, when I was born. So, yeah, but it's a old vintage, now, it's a vintage Hermes tarot deck. The Gothic tarot, this was like the first tarot deck I ever had. Lost it, and, have it back now. This is the Oracle of the Hekate Path. I just got this for Yule. Yes, Yule. The Pulp Tarot, this one I use like all the time. I love it. And then this is the Halloween Oracle. I don't really use this that much. And then I have another tarot deck. So anyway, under here, under Hecate's altar, we just have a basket with like supplies, candles, incense, herbs. And then we've got some prayer candles, a cauldron, my cauldron, of course, I've had it for ages. Salt, more candles. And then up here, we have this bell. This is an offering tray thing made in Mother Crone to Hekate. In the middle is Hecate's wheel. Various stones and driftwood from the ocean. Pentacle and a mug of weed, because Hecate's in charge of that stuff. The stag horns, it's actually a resin, it's not actual antlers, resin antlers, but, you know, she runs the wild hunt. Tonight it is the wild hunt again, so that's there to represent that. Keys, this is from the Dark Goddess 2024 calendar, amazing prints in there, so I printed that out to frame and put up here. This was gifted to me. This really, to me, reminds me of being that little boy that I was, 5, 6 years old, 4 years old, and looking up to the sky, looking for witches at night, knowing, just it encompasses everything that I felt the call. That's what I think of when I look at this, is her calling, her call. This is from Salem. It's like a card of a woodcut. It's really cool. And then, yeah, the goddess Hekate. So that's the altar to her. Oh yeah, this is an incense burner that I love. I love that it's 1920s. An owl lantern. Her chalice is not here right now because it is being cleaned, because it's got to be used for her, given to her tonight. So, you know, want to make sure you give her, always make sure you offer things out of clean dishware. So yeah, that is my altar to Hekate. Yeah, like I said, it goes all the way up the wall. I'm not lighting it because I only light it when calling to her. I don't think it's necessarily appropriate to do that, so, and record, so not doing that. But yeah, that's my altar to Hekate.